Hyungsung Park takes on Carlos Hernandez this Saturday at UFC Vegas 106. And this is going to be a really good scrap at flyweight between these guys. You've got Hyunsung Park, undefeated prospect, 9-0 in his career, coming off of the Road to China series. Has 2 wins in the UFC already, taking on Carlos Hernandez, who, another young guy, has a little bit more experience in the UFC. I think he's got about 6 fights, not including his Dana White's Contender Series win over Daniel Barres, who's very underrated. So I think this is going to be a really good matchup. The odds have Hyunsung Park, I think, a -190 going into this one, and I think it's a little bit more evens than that. So, like I said, Hyunsung Park, very good fighter, on an 8-fight finishing streak right now. Won his first pro fight by decision. Since then, has 4 knockouts and 4 finishes to his name. Just very well-rounded. Really light on his feet. Very crispy striker, fast combos, moves very well, lands good knees in the clinch. Just very physically strong for the flyweight division as well. Has really good leg strikes that he uses to set up his head strikes. Good body kicks. He has a liver kick TKO over Shannon Ross in his last outing. Barely touched the liver, so I don't know if you would call it that, but it did set up the TKO for him. And just throws to the body and head very well, mixing things up. Has good counter strikes on the back foot, as well as really good forward pressure combos. Pushing guys around in the cage. Just has really good forward pressure. Cuts off the cage very well. Can push a high pace for 30 rounds. Can be hit though. Was knocked down twice in the UFC. I think he was knocked down by Sung Guk Choi and then by Jeremiah Sirigar. And was getting hit a lot in that Choi fight as well before he got the finish in the 3rd round. So good grappling. Like I said, very well-rounded. 100% takedown defense in the UFC. Granted, it's only 2 fights, but taking on Carlos Hernandez, who I think is just as well-rounded. And I feel like the UFC brass doesn't like Carlos Hernandez because he went into the Contender Series fighting Daniel Barres, who's very good. Victor Altamirano is a very good fighter, really good grappler, really good scrambler, endless gas tank. Alon Nascimento, who's just a stud on the ground, very high-level black belt. Dennis Bondar, very good guy. Tatsuro Taira, we know how good he is. Ray Sarua, another very good wrestler, was undefeated heading into this fight. And then a win over Nam Jargal, Tumen Dembarel, who is also an undefeated fighter heading into their last fight. So last fight in November, with the win over Tumen Dembarel, and turning around to take on Hyunsung Park. But he's got really good scrambling ability and pretty good takedown defense. You know, I watched his fights against like Ray Saruya and Tatsuro Taira and Dennis Bondar, like these guys that have very high level wrestling, and he was holding his own in those fights. You know, like very hard to hold down. I get it, like at times he was being held down, but I feel like these guys are specialists in the grappling department, and he was able to do very well and, you know, essentially get the better of the striking, in my opinion, at times. Not against Taira, obviously, because he got KO'd, but very underrated grappling against these guys. And just has a very good urgency to pop up and just won't accept bottom position a lot of times. And I feel like that's going to really come in handy in this fight with Park. If he tries to get his takedowns to go for chokes, I feel like he's going to have a stiff test ahead of him. And Carlos Hernandez, who's going to be probably the taller, biggest guy that he's fought in his career. So and has really good cardio as well. I haven't seen him really hurting, sucking air by any means in the UFC, pushing a really high pace against really high caliber guys. Good technical boxing, fast combos, very sharp on the feet, really quick, has good movement, doesn't throw a ton of kicks. I wish he would throw a little bit more kicks, but moves really well in and out and landing very good combinations against guys that are really good. And he's only lost to really good competition. Like I said, Ray Saruya, Tatsuro Taira, and Alon Nascimento, beating a lot of other guys and getting a lot of good experience in the UFC, and has a lot better and more high-level experience in general than Hyunsung Park. And so I'm gonna have to go with the dog in this one in Carlos Hernandez. I think he's a dog. I think he's a tough dude. There's no quitting the guy. I think he's good everywhere. Park's good at getting guys out of there quick and beating guys that I feel like are below his level and definitely below the level of Carlos Hernandez. But I just think Carlos will be too tough for him to finish. We've seen Carlos get KO'd and choked out, but that's against very good guys. That's against specialists in Taira and Alon Nascimento. Granted, Tyra is more of a grappler, but got the finish via strikes. But you know, having that takedown and grappling threat opens up your strikes a lot. And then Ray Saruya, another really good wrestler. And I don't think that Hyungsung Park is going to be able to wrestle and control Carlos Hernandez like some of these guys have been able to do. And he's been hurt. Like I said, Park has been hurt in his career. I know Carlos Hernandez can hurt guys. Like I said, he's got really good boxing. And I know that he's been hurt as well, but I don't know if Hyungsung Park is going to have the ability to drop him and hurt him like he's been able to do that, like I said, to some of these guys on the regional scene who, you know, granted just don't have the best records. I mean, he's fought in a lot of kind of cans, if I dare say it, on his way up, and had trouble with Sung Choi in his UFC debut, a guy who was 6-1 at the time and now is 9-3. And got kind of a layup in Shannon Ross in his next fight back in December. And Shannon Ross, you know, very chinny, 13-8 in his career at the time, now 13-9. So I just don't rate these losses very well. I rate Carlos Hernandez's fights and the people that he's losing to and the experience and rub that he's getting against those guys. I don't think there's anything that Park brings that Carlos Hernandez hasn't seen and can't deal with. I trust Carlos on the ground. I trust him to either at least stay safe or win the scrambles to keep it on the feet. I think he can push a very high pace against Hyungsung Park and land, you know, the better strikes in the exchanges. Hyungsung Park is the better kicker. I think he lands the better leg kicks. I think he's a big, strong guy, but again, you know, Carlos Hernandez, he's going to be an inch taller, and he doesn't, like, I think he's got a very good style to beat Hyungsung Park, who's used to kind of just overwhelming guys and getting guys out of there that aren't really his level, his caliber. And I feel like he's coming up against a guy like Carlos Hernandez, who's very experienced, very well-rounded, isn't just going to crumble under the adversity, isn't going to allow him to just take him down and pound him out from back mount or take him down and immediately get the rear naked choke. And you could argue that he was losing that fight to Sung Choi before he got the rear naked choke. And Sung Choi fights very similar to Carlos Hernandez. Not as good, though. So I'm going to go with Carlos Hernandez in this one. I think he's going to keep the fight where he wants it. If he feels like he has the grappling advantage, he'll be shooting takedowns. If he feels like he can piece him up on the feet and has the better footwork, better boxing, is a little bit faster because he is very fast, I think he has the ability to keep it on the feet and win over 3 rounds. I don't see him getting Hyungsung Park out of there. He might be able to get the KO just because we've seen Park get dropped by lesser competition, but I think Carlos Hernandez can do enough on the feet over 3 rounds, utilizing his experience and just grittiness to get a decision win over Hyungsung Park. Thanks.